And welcome. I'm Barbara Tien, and this is another wonderful episode of Kathy's Corner. These fabulous programs we hold once a month where Kathy Stone, uh, who has been a professional photo manager, photo organizer for decades, steps in as she shares with us her own experience of applying her skills to her own collection. It's always a wonderful experience getting tips and tricks and the practicalities of applying a professional tools to regular folks and regular experiences. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Stone. Go ahead, Kathy.
Thanks, Barbara. And if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Barbara will interrupt me and ask me them, or we can, or save until the end, whichever. We're pretty easygoing. We've only got, I think, 6, which includes Barbara and I. So we can chat. We don't have to just power through the presentation. The first thing I'm going to do is Jane Hutchin in our group of followers, friends on Substack community, which I think some of you are on as well, asked a question. She was talking about a subject dear to my heart. I think she called it ghosts of the past, but she's been acquiring photos that aren't of her own family, because if we don't have enough photos of our own to sort, let's buy some that are other people's. But she's mostly of getting interested in the carte de visites and things like cabinet cards, the very old styles of photo. They're an art form, in fact. And I had to confess in her article comments that I have indeed got that little problem as well, where I have photos that aren't mine, aren't of my family. They're carefully in a folder marked, these are not family, just so I don't confuse anybody down the road, although it does tempting to throw a couple in and say, hey, let somebody else down the road figure out who people were. And so that we're on Substack too, so you can find that. Barbara just put the link in the chat. But Jane asked if I would help her with how to clean those old things. And with the carte de visite and cabinet cards, because they're mounted on cardboard, there are very old photographs mounted on cardboard. I wouldn't use anything other than a brush or a microfiber cloth, not a bumpy one, like a very smooth one, or an anti-static brush. I talked about them in the last session. I think I was talking about that last session. I can't remember. But in some session, I talked about cleaning photos and the tools you needed to do them. And that would be what I would use. If there's something on the actual surface, you might be able to use a PEC pad. It's a PEC pad, which is designed for cleaning photographs, to gently wipe, or PEC solution, which I would use really, really tiny amounts of, because of the nature of the photo being on top of cardboard. Regular photos, surprisingly, are quite tolerant of getting wet, not soaked, but we talked a lot. Actually, I talked in this in a different session. Might be a topic for a future Kathy's Corner about recovering and cleaning. That's probably what I'm thinking of, old photos and damaged photos, but topic for another time. But that's what I would suggest, Jane, is that you be very careful. A brush, if it's just dust, maybe a wipe with a microfiber cloth or a PEC pad. But I'd be very cautious about using, with modern photos, if you have something sticky on it, we suggest use PEC solution or even undo. But I wouldn't put that on an old photo, just because of they're so fragile, particularly ones on cardboard, because the photo would probably be okay, but the cardboard that they're mounted on would probably not tolerate getting wet. So that was just a quick follow-up to a question that appeared in Substack. So we do answer them, the questions that people post on in our projectkin.org. But today we wanted to talk about how to choose an organizing program. And people always say, I see this a lot of times amongst photo managers, where somebody wants, does anyone have a chart showing the advantages and the features of all the different software out there? And everyone goes, gee, that would be a great idea. And then they go to do it and go, yeah, no, there's so many, and it's worse now. Like years ago when I started this, it wasn't that hard. But there's so many programs now. I think I heard of 2 or 3 more just at our Photo Managers virtual conference in May that I had never even heard of before. So they change all the time, and comparison charts are out of date almost as soon as someone creates them. So we're all looking for a way to pick a program that's right for you. And what do I say is the best program? It depends. You need to know what your goals are and what results you want to see. What are you working on? And then decide what criterion features you need or want for your family history. What's important to you may not be as important for me. And you may need more than one program to meet your needs. And I think that's very important because we can talk about organizing, and I think that's what we titled our session. Organizing might not be the same as sharing, might not be the same as how you archive it or how you keep it. So there's different things that you may have to have more than one program to get the best way to deal with it. I wish I could say, you know what, this is the program, it does everything and it's the absolute best, but there isn't really one yet. So we have to keep working on that. So we're going to look at some of the possibilities that are out there that we can have a look at. And no, actually, no, we're not. We're going to look at criteria to pick what help you decide what's important to you, and just be aware of some things that it is important to consider. Barbara wrote an article a while back, and it was called "The 5 Elements of a Digital Solution for Family History Records," and it was published last year. And there she did. She popped the link in for me. Only 15 people have looked at it, so go have a read of it and pop those statistics up. It was written right after, for those of you who aren't familiar with Project Kin, we arose out of the ashes of a good software program called Ponga. And Barbara was one of the co-founders of Ponga, and I just hung around because I liked them and I thought it was cool what they were doing, and it was one of my favorite softwares. But sadly, in the world of startups, not all of them make it. And so we decided just to keep our community here. So Barbara wrote this article back then of sort of encompassing what the 5 elements that Project Kin, that we think at Project Kin are important. And I agree with them. And so now I'm trying out a new technology here. I'm going to go to an existing whiteboard, click on it, and open it. Okay, and can you see it? I have no idea why.
Yes.
Okay. Cursors are hidden. Yeah, let's just keep cursors hidden for now. So this is I've worked on this chart. I hope it's big enough for everyone to see. I think I can make it a little bigger. And we'll just scroll through. How about that? Maybe. Oh,
You can
yeah,
also
I'm playing with a
adjust your.
new thing here. So the orange color there are the 5 elements that came from that article. And the first thing, and probably I put this first, it was one of the 5, but the first thing for me and for Barbara is privacy, or you need a program that's private. Family history includes a ton of personal information, names, birth dates, marriage dates, death dates, places people lived. You want that information to be secure and not visible to the public. I'm going to say this many times when we talk about privacy. It's really important that you read the terms and conditions that you are agreeing to. You know that big long thing that we all just click on accept? We should be reading them. I'm currently taking a privacy course, and that's one of the biggest things when we talk about applications and software and programs is read those terms and conditions. Who owns your photos once you upload them into an app? What rights does the provider have to use artificial intelligence on your photos to train their AI? That's just a recent thing. Back in the old days, that wasn't a concern, but with the bursting out of AI the last couple of years, it's now a question. And does that matter to you? May not matter to you, but questions you should ask yourself. Always have strong passwords. Definitely for your family history, I wouldn't be using your mother's maiden name or things like that because it's going to be right in those accounts. Two-factor authentication, that's where you put your password in and then you get an email, a text, something else to verify that it's you. It'll give you a number just to make sure that it is you signing in. That's becoming more and more important than just your password, because passwords get stolen and hacked. And also make sure you check all the default settings and you keep in control of what the settings are. And the settings may be things like if you're sharing, who can see this, what's um, where are the pictures stored, things like that. But always look at because the default settings, particularly if you're using things like the bigger programs like Google, Amazon, Photos, things like that, because the default settings may be a little laxer than you would like. So privacy, really important. And I'll say the last tip I have is read the terms and conditions and make sure you know what you're agreeing to. And I know how boring it is. Like, I don't like that either, I think. Or get a lawyer. Have your kid be a lawyer so they can read you all the terms and conditions, and you do not have to read them yourself. But you should read them, particularly with important things like your family archive and history. Another one of the 5 elements is that we want to be able to share. So in addition to we want privacy, but it want to be shareable. We want to be able to share the stories and the photos. This is a keystone of Project Kit, the storytelling. But we feel very strongly about what we are sharing with who. So you want a program that will allow you to share with when you're thinking your goals, who do I want to share this with? And what kind of things can they do once I share it? So for example, if I share a link in a program with someone, can they just look? Can they download? And can they share that link with someone else so what I think is private and I'm only sharing with them, can they just reshare that link with anybody and then other people get the link too? So the shareable and privacy kind of tie right together with what we're trying to do. Next up, just hang on here to move something. The next element from Project Kin of those 5 elements was tell the story. Make sure that any program you're using that you can tell the story. And this is actually part of organizing because you kind of want the stories in there right at the beginning. Crucial that we tell the stories behind the photos and that the stories stay with the photos. If there's links, we don't want those links to get lost. We don't want, if we put the information in the metadata or the information about the photo, we don't want that to get removed. The ability in a program, the ability to tell lengthy stories or to easily connect a photo to various documents. Ideally, connect it to websites too, which is what we could do in Ponga. But we want to make sure that the storytelling component for us is another key. Project Kin believes, organized by faces. Project Kin believes that stories are linked to people and pictures are a foundation of organizing. You may want to add other levels of organization as well, but facial recognition is a key part of the organization, and organizing by people in Project Kin, we believe that that's one of the other key elements and foundations is to organize by people, particularly because we're talking about family history here. Might not be what you want to do with all your digital photos and everything, but with family history, facial recognition becomes a key factor as well. We also want to protect we archived or stored. We want to protect the artifacts that our ancestors so carefully preserved for us. Backups of the digital aren't just something we might do once in a while. They become a key factor, particularly if we don't keep the physical. Because if the digital becomes the only thing we have, then the backup and our digital artifact becomes most important for that. Anything to add, Barbara? Any questions?
Only to be very sure everybody understands that Ponga, as you were referring to as the former company, former software, Project Kin is a community. Unlike Ponga, we are not a software platform. And in fact, my experience having been a co-founder of a software platform in this day and age taught me really looking at the large picture and recognizing that really lessons learned from the larger perspective of the consumer side, because I too am a consumer, and that's what really brought a lot of these kinds of priorities forward as I was looking for how I was going to be dealing with my own collection in a post-Pongo world. So that's where a lot of those kinds of notions come from, and I wholeheartedly endorse Kathy's perspective of, what are the priorities of things to be looking for, and a lot of times the answer is going to be a workflow. It's not any given software. And it may be a particular software now because you understand what role it's playing. And it may not be the best software 3 years from now, 5 years from now. But if you understand what its role is in the workflow and that it is standards based, then you can have confidence that future versions will be able to adopt those file formats, JPEG, for example, metadata, for example, and carry it forward. Generally, our faces don't change all that much, for example, and generally technologies like facial recognition, facial organization get better, not worse, generally. Whole separate conversation. Thank you, Kathy.
But I think that's important too, Barbara, because we want to make the job as easy as possible. And when you look at organized by faces, 10 years ago, you would have gone, are you kidding me? Because it would have been so much work. You would have had to be looking at every single photo and moving stuff around. But now you want to take advantage of the technology. But for the private part, you want to know what that technology is doing. And then storage becomes very, very the archive, because this is your family history collection. And again, we're talking a lot about, or predominantly with family history, we're talking a lot of scans. There may be some digital photos, but we talked about the other element was digitizing. I split privacy and shareable into two to make it still five, but the other one was digitizing, but we've already talked about that last year and a bit this year. So I've added some. So the blue part are Kathy's criteria, or things that okay, I gotta make sure I see if I can move this. Come on. I love technology. I love technology. Yikes. I can't grab the slider. Can I just move the whole thing? No. Okay, well, we'll keep 1 second while I deal with technology. Oh, I had it for a minute. Oh my gosh. Oh, there we go. Okay. So we're moving along. One of the things that's really important to me is customer support. I want a human being I can talk to ideally, or at least a company that will answer an email once in a while. That's something that you need to figure out what's most important for you, is what level of customer support do they provide? Some companies provide really good customer support. Other companies, well, good luck getting in touch with a human being at Google or Amazon. Probably not going to happen. But that's something for me would be one of the most important things, because I'm probably going to have questions about the software or what I'm trying to do. I will probably maybe run into problems where I need somebody to help me. So that's another criteria for me. Does the software support, or the application? I've got to stop using software. It's applications now. We can talk about apps, not software, but does the app support the file types that you have to put into your family history? And I talk about, obviously JPEGs, HEICs. Does it support video? Does it support audio? Does it support PDF documents? If you're a genealogist, does it support GEDCOMs? All those documents that are part of your history, ideally, it would be nice to have them all collected in one place and your final product. I think that's what everybody would like. So check out what file types are supported, because some programs don't support a whole lot of file types. Some support a ton, a few others, but not everything. So file types, well, that's another one. And I'm including like audio, video, all those things in that category. What organizing tools does it provide? And we talked about facial recognition, I want to be able to correct dates because if I'm dealing with scans, I want to fix the dates. Um, I want something in my organizing software called fuzzy dating. And what fuzzy dating is, if you don't know, is when I don't know that when a picture was taken, say I'm back in the 1900s and I don't actually know what day that picture was taken, I want to be able to put it sometime in the 1900s so that down the road somebody knows, yeah, we didn't know when this was created, we didn't know who took the picture. I don't want it, a way to get around it if it doesn't have that is to have a standard and say, okay, anything from this year is 1900, 0101. But then down the road, does someone come along and think, oh, that was January 1st and I wonder how they knew that. So you spend a lot of time explaining that that doesn't really mean that on that picture, but then does the picture that was from January 1st, 1952, is that a real January 1st or is it another guess? So I really like to be able to put a fuzzy date where I can say, if I just write 1900, we know I don't know any other dates. So that's what fuzzy dating is. You don't need this as much in scanning if you've organized well, and it becomes a lot more trickier than working with digital files, but a deduplication app is nice too. And a lot of programs don't have one, and you need to go outside to do that. So in organizing tools, I want to be able to keyword or tag my photos. I want to create tags to simplify my sorting processes. And those tags could be people, locations, um, activities, all sorts of things, but I want that in there. I want good search features that allow me to search by a number of things. So that if I'm looking for pictures of my dog from 1969, I want to be able to search 1969 and my dog's name and where did we live then, or I want the picture of my cousin Richard with my dog from 1969. I want to be able to search in a number of ways and find a specific picture that I'm looking for. Um, did I have any others? Oh, this came out of Kathy's experience today with her Adobe Acrobat. Um, if it has artificial intelligence, is it automatic or is it manual? Can you turn it on or off? Can you choose to use it or is it just going to be there? So my Adobe Acrobat Pro apparently updated, and so I'm filling out a form today, and it is now giving me suggested responses from every previous form I ever filled out. So I type 2 letters and I get all this weird stuff. So I'd like to be able to turn that off, but I also want to be able to use the power of AI in my program, but I want to control it. Makes sense? If you can think of other organizing tools, throw them into the chat, or I think you could try and type them right on the chart, but I don't know that we'll go that far in the technology just yet. I want a program that I can do bulk organizing in. And what that means is I don't want to have to tag every single photo separately. I want to be able to work in bulk. I want to be able to do redating in bulk. If I have a ton of pictures that are from Christmas of 1952, I want to be able to select them all. I want to be able to date them all that date. I want to be able to put the description on everything. I want to be able to keyword them all in a bulk. I don't want to have to go a picture at a time. And it's kind of like for organizing, it's kind of like using a big funnel is what bulk organizing does. So you start with the broadest category and keep moving down. So if I've got a big event, I can start with um, all the pictures that are in from that event. Or if I start with I've got my facial recognition, I can start with all the pictures that are of a certain person, and I can make sure the tag is on there for all those people. And then I can start breaking it down into smaller categories where I'm dealing with smaller amounts of people. I want to be able to write a story on a bunch of pictures if I've got 20 pictures of the same event, I don't want to put the story on every single photo one at a time. I want the story on all the pictures, and then I can narrow down and add to the add any particular specific stories about a certain photo, or tag it with certain, if it'll be, the faces should be recognized if my facial recognition is working. And then I'll narrow down to the things that only apply to a few photos, if that makes sense. I want an application that will preserve metadata. So metadata is a bunch of that stuff that I just finished talking about. Facial recognition is metadata. The dates are part of the metadata. It's the information about the picture or the document. You can have metadata on anything. It could be on a video. So I want all the information that I'm carefully adding. I want it to stay there if my cousin wants a copy of this picture and I send it to him digitally. I want all that information to go with it. I don't want it removed when I take it out of the program. That just gave me another, I'm going to say that a thing that's not on the list, but I want a program where I can easily get my photos out of it and my documents out of it without losing information I added. But also, it shouldn't be hard for me to download my family collection if I want to move it out of a program. And that's something I think to do with Barb's comment about stuff changing, is if I decide down the road, yeah, you know what, this program I've been using, it's not really doing it for me. I want an easy way to get my stuff out. I don't want to be spending time, and I don't want it to compress my information when I download it, and I don't want it to strip my metadata off. So it's important that you check that when you choose a program, that it's any work you've done in it, you can easily export not only your stuff, but the information you've added from the program. To me, another thing for me is important. So this goes back to my archive and the storage. I want a legacy plan. I want something that, because apparently I'm not going to live forever. I want something so that I can designate who gets all this information when I'm gone. I want to be able to, and this goes back to when, for my preference is, I don't want to rent storage from anybody. I want to buy my storage so that I have it and it's paid for. And when I go, it gets passed on to my kids and they don't have to keep paying to keep our family history. Because I don't want somebody's credit card to expire in the future, or somebody to lose track of it, so that then it's gone. So you want to make sure that there's some kind of legacy plan. Nice to have are editing tools. You don't need them. You probably all know a bunch of different editing programs, but you may want to do some editing. Like, I like my program to at least to be able to rotate pictures, because when you scan stuff, sometimes things aren't up the right way. I want to be able to rotate basic things like rotate. I'd like to do a little color correction. Maybe cropping if I've got documents and there's big pieces missing and stuff. Some basic editing tools that might come in handy. A free trial is good. There's lots of programs that offer free trial. One thing you need to do is figure out whether the free trial is a full feature trial or just a few features to just let you decide. What a lot of professional photo managers do is they have a specific set of photos. It's a duplicate set. Usually they use their own photos, but it's a set of photos, a collection, that when they're doing a free trial, they can run whatever the application is supposed to do on this set of files. They're not originals, they'd be duplicates, but it's a set thing. And then you try and do all those other things that are important to you on that set, and you can compare to another program. And that's easier if you're not using, if you're not trying to do it with all your own photos. Like, I know I've talked to different people at different times who say, I tried this program and the first thing I did was I uploaded all my 70,000 photos to it, and I don't like it. Or now I don't know what I did, or I like the software, but I made a bunch of mistakes when I was playing around. And so now I don't know whether to just dump everything and start over or what to do. So if you're trying things out, a small amount, like not 4 or 5, but a reasonable amount, but not your whole collection, is great for a trial. And free trials are a good way to get an idea of the basic things that you want to do. if you can do them in that program, and if they're easy to figure out how to do them, or their help or training is helpful and you learn from it. Or if it just blows your mind, or if they just say, okay, well, go Google this on how to do it. If you're having to Google how to use a program, maybe not the best program to look at. So something that's got, which actually would be another whole field. Let's just experiment. Let's go here. I only learned how to do this yesterday, so. What was I saying?
Googleable
Oh, help, training.
training.
I won't put help because help is part of, okay.
Just put a voice in for apps that are, to your point about customer support, you said that if you have to go search on Google to find help for something, you probably should be looking elsewhere, which is a fair point. But I think there is a counterpoint to that, which is if you choose a program where there is no Google, nobody else has written an answer for supporting it, then that may also be a red flag
That is
because
a good
nobody
point.
else has heard of it.
Yeah, I think that's a great
a,
point,
a
that if nobody's
package that,
heard of it.
yeah, a
I was more
package that
thinking
may
if
have
your
flaws.
only
And
way to figure out how to do something
yes,
is by Googling it, and you're getting, the issue for me is always, does the person who's answering on Google or what I'm looking at, do they know what they're talking about?
Mhm.
Or do they have, do they have an interest in this or a reason or something?
Right.
That's my
Yep.
thing about that. So anybody, will open it up now, and I can, now that I know I can add stuff, we'll just keep adding more things. If you've got more, what are your criteria that are important? Anybody?
I can't stand the silence. I've got one. To your point about privacy and facial organization, I wanted to add what I see to be a non-starter if it doesn't have this, and that is to say facial organization is great. But one of the most important criteria for me is what is the company policy for the training data for facial organization? And if you ask them the question, basically, what what happens to they're called facial geometries. What happens to the facial organization data about the facial geometries? And they don't know what you're asking. You could try rephrasing it a few times more elegantly than I just did. What you're looking for is an answer that says, we do not keep that information. That information belongs only to the user of the software, and it is destroyed, when you close your program, something to that effect, because that information is gold,
Yeah.
and it's your gold, not theirs.
Tana's just added one, is that, does the application that you're storing stuff in, will it update file formats as they change? So if a file, and we'll look at, like, I don't know what MP3 or MP4 started out with before MP3 and 4, but does something like your video file become something that's not usable outside of it? Is it a file format that has now changed? So a software, which would be in terms of my archive, I'd like the program to update my file formats without me having to go back in and fix every file format.
But that should also be an option, right?
That's another good one. Can you print from the app? Oh, there's another really good one from Lisa. Okay, just hang on. I gotta get this in the right place. Can you easily explain it to family and people you're going to share with? I don't know how I'm going to make that a short thing, but
Easy to use and explain.
how about easy to use for others? And that's a good one, because if you've got something you're using that nobody can figure out how to use it, not going to be very helpful. I quite like this whiteboard thing. I figured out now how to add columns and everything. And with the printing that we added, that Cynthia's point there is, and that's one thing we talk about, that's hence the name Project Kin. We're all about different projects. So that's a good point too, is can you can you make a project right out of that app, or do you need another app? And again, is that important to you, or do you can just use another app? And so what you would do to use this is figure out which criteria are important to you, and then list your programs that that you want to check, and then go through the different criteria that are important to you. Remember, I talked about that at the beginning. And you may end up with more than one app to do everything you want to do. And I think that was Barbara's discussion question. So did anyone try? Can you download the whiteboard? Or do I need to put it somewhere else? Anybody who wants it? I just don't know.
Save as template, export,
Where?
PDF. Yes. Up on the hamburger menu, there is an export option.
Oh, wow. Cool.
So you can put it into a PDF so that Acrobat can answer for
If
you.
you want to keep the list, so.
Yeah.
And we'll do that for the recording. Because obviously you're not going to be able to get it out of the recording, but there's a lot of different things like cost. I think I skipped over cost. I got talking about legacy and free trials and everything and skipped cost. But to me, cost may be a factor that is important. So that's something to consider with different programs too, is in general, free. Make sure your free is still covers off private. That tends to be a problem with free. And also, if it's free, check on customer support particularly, and whether you could get your photos back out easily. Because
Why is it free?
Is, huh?
Why is it free?
Why? Yeah, why is it free? Is there a reason it's free?
Usually there is.
And I guess from experience, and where we go. I would also consider, how long has the program been available? Because I know I mentioned at the beginning, I heard about 2 or 3 new startups that are offering to do everything. The one place for everything. Quite a few of them, they don't actually do everything, but are they going to last? Are you going to put a bunch of your stuff in it and then have it go away? And again, where it becomes important that you can get your stuff out.
I can't help myself, Kathy. I mean, I fundamentally disagree, for the sake of having a dialogue, if you will. In terms of I think there's a fundamental question of what is the thing that you're looking for to do. And you sort of raised that, and in that I agree with you. But I caution people to be trying to look for the one program to rule them all, because in so many ways, whether it's in creating projects, in sharing them, from a marketing perspective, we've been taught to think about product categories. And, the stuffier, the more stuff in a product category, the richer the thing must be. But so often, if all of us remember Microsoft Word, it can sort of topple over from its weight of being so full of features you can't use it. And I think in today's use of apps, they aren't, at least in my day, they typically aren't apps that I'm actually running on my computer. They're typically links to an app that's running in the cloud anyway. And my next piece of that, the next feature, I just go get from another browser window. I use Canva, for example, all day long. And it's an app here, but I'm copying and pasting there. It makes no difference where it is. And I only use, do I use it for photo editing? Sometimes it depends on what feature I'm trying to do, right? So I think our model today, in the last 5 years, the model has fundamentally changed, that we are so fluidly moving back and forth between forms. I, for example, for my family history, use weare.xyz, which is kind of a none of the above. They certainly don't do any photo editing, but they really address a lot of the archiving kinds of things. And surprisingly, they put names on photos very well. So to me, what is the problem you're trying to solve is probably the first question to ask.
I love it. Toolbox versus savior.
Yeah,
I love it,
great
Karen.
way to put it. Thank you.
Yes.
I think it also depends too on, to your point, Barbara, about what you're trying to do, because I think there's not that many spectacular tools that are great at organizing and great at the archiving long term. They tend to focus on one or the other. So, if you're using one app to do your basic organizing and structure, regardless of what it is, for me, it happens to be Lightroom at this point. And then sharing them another way, the thing that I caution people, or what I'm concerned about, is that people aren't using these apps and not keeping a hub and backing that up and don't leave these things just in the cloud and not have a way to access your data so that you don't own it. And then if something happens or it goes offline, you don't have access to it. And then the other side of that is, okay, well then, for longevity purposes, if you don't want to give everybody, a 2 terabyte hard drive with everything on it, but you want to access it, then that's where, some of those other longer term things like forever, permanent. I'm actually experimenting with permanent right now with a family member using their free, you get 1 gig free as a child, or 1 gig free period when you sign up. And then through the photo managers, we got a little bit more. And I have a family member that I'm sharing some stuff with. So we're sharing our archives, but I can limit what he can do and he can limit what I do, or certain viewers. So it's a whole different thing from organizing, where we can organize within the family, but I've already done all the other organizing with renaming and things like that. That would be a little more tedious because they may not have as robust the organizing tools that a Lightroom or a Mylio or another organizing program might have.
That's a great point, because what is organizing? It means different things to different people.
Well, and the difference between what are you doing? Are you organizing? Are you, there's organizing, and we talked about, you want to tell the stories. You may need the sharing and collaboration to get the stories, and then the finalized archive. And I go with, like, if you put it on you get a 2 terabyte hard drive. For their external hard drives are cheap right now. But I've just spent for a client many hours and quite a bit of her money pulling a bunch of stuff off CDs, because computers, you don't have CDs. If people are operating now without even like a computer, just with tablets, phones. So if you get a CD, and then it's where's the archive, and it needs to be, like you said, Stacy, in more than one place. You need a hard copy. You need one of my cousins, sadly, she's done this for her mother's side of the family, which isn't the side that I'm related to her from, but she's publishing a 500-page document on paper that's the whole family history of her mom's side of the family. And a book publisher said that's going to be really big and unwieldy, and suggested that they publish it as just loose pages to put in a binder, because then pages can be updated and replaced. I'm like, yeah, I can't knock that, because for some people they want that. And she's offering, like, do you want just a digital file of everything? Or if you want, well, print the whole thing off and you can have paper to look at. And that paper isn't going to go anywhere unless it gets burned up. But if that's why you have many backups of various different things. So
Yeah, that's why, like, to your point, Kathy, about having the multiple versions, like have that paper copy, but then if you have a digital copy, like on with my cousin, I was able to take the paper copies of some family trees that my grandfather had scribbled that we really haven't fully deciphered, and scan them and put them in his PDF. So now that side of the family can see those documents, even though I have the first copies of the pages. So, you know, having that, but then having it back up somewhere else and, you know, have those copies, because, you know, free, you get what you pay for. So, you know, some of the free services that are going to offer you the free cloud, you don't know what they're doing with your data, you know, and you don't know how protected it is tomorrow. As you know, like I don't know how many here know, but within the photo managers group, we know that, you know, there was an issue where a lot of people had started saving all of their photos on Shutterfly, because that was back in the day, they were saving all that, they were using that as their hub. And then they changed their terms and conditions last year that they will not allow unlimited storage unless you buy something at a minimum of once a year. And so many photo managers have spent hours upon hours upon hours downloading and getting these out of Shutterfly, because you can only do them in bulk. I mean, in small bulk, you can't do a one pass. So they spent hours bulking down and, you know, chunking down thousands and thousands of images that people had as these free things. So that's the kind of thing we want to be careful of going forward, that you have your hub copy as your base that you keep no matter where you choose to save it or share it to. So
yeah.
Lesson learned, right?
Yeah.
So
and that also speaks to knowing knowing what the terms and conditions are, but also that companies can change them. Like, they can decide, no, we're not doing that anymore. And they also Shutterfly also decided, when Costco Photos shut down their printing services, they decided they just move it. They were going to partner with Shutterfly, and they just were going to move all your photos there. And I'm like, yeah, no, you're not. Like, I had my photos with you. I don't want them in Shutterfly. Like, and I had several discussions that ended up changing. But initially, they were just going to automatically move all mine. So then I spent a ton of time, and I didn't store my photos there, but I had stuff in there that I printed that I didn't really want them to have. And so I didn't want them to go somewhere where I knew not where they went. So I had to go through and delete them all. But it's just time wasters that is part of having good criteria to check. And you got to keep looking up. And it's like the default settings. You have to keep looking up the default settings, because sometimes they update something and they change. And if you'd like a tip, don't store your photos in Facebook. That's my one tip of the day, where I will actually name a company. I'll talk privately with anybody about what I use, what I do, but do not use Facebook as a photo storage site, because it compresses all your photos.
not only does it compress them, but I had a breach last year and my account got locked and I didn't get it returned, and so literally it's gone. I had to restart from ground zero. Fortunately, I didn't save any photos in there, but had I would have been SOL, because I had a business page at the time as well. It took all of that down.
Yeah.
Without any repercussion. So
it also not only compresses the files, but it changes all the dates and the names. So it becomes with digital stuff, it becomes an easy way to lose all your metadata right there and then.
Also, someone else can find your photos and decide to use your photos for their own purposes, whatever their purposes might be, nefarious or mathematical, in the sense of, again,
Yep.
training, facial recognition, or other kinds of things. And this is especially important for children's faces.
And what do I remember? Facebook's free.
And Facebook also avoids any possibility of using duplicate programs.
Yes, exactly.
What do you mean by that? Sorry, what do you mean?
It names it using a Facebook name,
yes.
and so your duplicate finder won't find them because they think they're two different things.
Yeah.
Duplicate finders look for duplicate names?
Name, well, it depends on what you're setting for, but names, dates, all that's changed. So if you could have the identical image, Instagram does it too, because I'll get that where things that they save it to my phone and they'll end up in my automatic backup account, and I'll have 3 pictures sitting in a row, and they have the original one that I took that has my information that's correct, and then there'll be the date I uploaded or downloaded, depending on which direction you want to say we're going. So it does make it harder to use a duplicate finder program.
Plus the compression changes the file sizes, so it can't compare file sizes.
Exactly. So you've lost pretty much all the easy ways that a duplicate finder will find your duplicates. And that's how I've ended up in my account, which has set to not upload duplicates, but those are the only duplicates. Like if I forget what I'm doing, it'll tell me this is already in your account, but those all sit in there all in a nice little row because it doesn't recognize them as duplicates. And you'd have to go with a much more advanced duplicate finder that is actually looking at images. And duplicate finders are going to get way better to be able to do that, look at images as AI develops more too. But right now,
Spies I knew more.
so social media has a purpose. It's not photo storage or organizing, not where to do it. And I shudder when I see I have family members, not my children. My children are much better at it, but I have family members who I think are using Facebook as their photo organizing software. And I'm just go like, and I don't hesitate to tag them when I post, don't use photo forever to store your photos. Like if this is where your only photos are, you're going to be sad some point in the future. So Stacy asked, what other programs are you using?
That wasn't a question directed at me. That was directed at everybody else. What programs are you using?
Yeah, Stacy wants to know what programs you got. Oh, what are you all using?
Well, I'll take a sling and an arrow. I am still a Google photo user, and I use the paid version. Only the paid version. I do not allow it to compress my photos, and I export my photos with Google Takeout. And I had just made myself a note to do what I promised myself I would do 3 months ago, which is to schedule the takeouts. And I have done the takeouts and I have done the expansions and I'm satisfied that it's doing what I need it to do. But for a bunch of reasons we can argue about some other time, I do not fuss with the metadata of each one, which I know is a fundamental flaw with Google Photos in terms of it losing that kind of metadata that's added into it. The original file is there, but other things like date information and location information, I will not put in there, and I do not put in there, and I do not want in there. But that's a separate conversation. Because you want me to have
the
opinions.
Privacy aspect, because you know, and I think that's if there's something, and I see a difference. Like for me, there's a difference between working with all the, and then I get in this stuck on what's the definition of old, because I didn't think I was old until I went to a family reunion and all these kids that I thought were babies and they're actually like teenagers. I'm like, holy crap. But anyway, I digress. I think I look at things differently with, I wouldn't upload all my scanned family history to Google, but I might use it to back up my digital stuff now. I look at a difference between scanned family history and digital photos as photos taken as a digital photo. And I think it's partly, I will start with what needs to be protected and preserved and saved and have metadata added to it earlier rather than currently. Currently, a lot of stuff already has metadata added to it, like it's got dates, locations, and time, provided the program that you moved it from didn't delete all that. But with my family history photos, I want them somewhere where and those are the ones that I will work on to add all that metadata, to run all that facial recognition on, to do that. I will do more organizing on that than necessarily, because a lot of it needs to be done manually or using, something like facial recognition, where with a digital photo, it's much easier to do. Like a lot of programs, I don't know, Google does it. I think Google runs facial recognition on your digital photos. I think Apple does. What's it called now? Photos? Apple Photos.
Apple Photos.
So
Yeah.
make you albums of everything now. Windows Photos will do it too if you have any desire to have it do that. I personally like to make my own categories. I'm stubborn that way. I don't want something else deciding how I want stuff. This is where Barbara and I are going to disagree, I can tell.
I'm just doing this to encourage discussion. But for the family photos that I have scanned, as you say, the category of important legacy family photos I scan, I do keep those here as well. I don't have an allergy to duplicates, but we've talked about this before. But so I keep, I do the scan, I do the careful, and then I put them over there. I feel guilty for what further organization I should be doing for what's archived there. But I actually see it as a value to also put them in the cloud, where when I need to go grab a picture of Grandpa Harger, I go to the cloud and I go to Google and I say Harger, and instantly I have it. In the same way I say, I want a beach, I got it. I want that picture of that flower, I got it. And I have never have trouble finding a photo. I can't even imagine having a problem finding a photo. So to me, that's the power of having that there. Even if I feel good, I look over here and feel good that it's protected. For my own family stories and photos, for those, I'm putting a priority of my limited time into taking those a story at a time into a separate archive where I'm doing the storytelling. And as a part of that storytelling, adding the names and the dates and birth and death dates and everything else. And the nice news is I have I have family doing that with me now too. So it's not all me. And that's my strategy, but I'm a little free and easy with the whole duplicate thing.
I think it's important that you have a workflow, and then you find a application that will do what you need to make your workflow go easiest. That's a terrible English sentence there I just put together, but that will make it easier to follow your workflow. And sometimes you may design a workflow around a particular application or program, and then have sort of like little satellite programs you need to use to do something that program doesn't. But I think it's again, keeping in mind the difference between the different steps of the different steps of taking your, as the article was called, taking our tubs of photos to tales of yore. There's 8 steps involved, and so it depends on what step you're working on, what app you might use for that, and whether it'll do everything you want it to do. And Stacy, I'll throw it out there. I think all the Forever people are being very quiet. Good for you. I use Forever. I have for years. I've used it ever since I first heard about it at a conference in Dallas in 2012 or 13, one of the years. I can never remember what year it was when I heard, and it only had storage at that point. It was simply a storage program. And I went, this guy knows what he's doing. This guy's really got it. And I'm very happy that now 12, 14 years later, it's just, there's huge piles and more features with it. But that's my primary, I have 2 purposes that I'm using it for, that I consider 2 distinct things. There's an app to back up my phone. I no longer take camera pictures anymore for whatever reason, partly because my camera now, my DSLR has a far inferior camera to my phone, and my phone is a lot lighter and it's always with me, but I back up my phone. It backs up everything, and I need to go in and then wipe out the screenshots and all that other stuff. But I don't want to lose my phone. And I figure lots more chance I'm going to drop this, break it, lose it than my big camera was. So I back up my phone. That's a thing. At some point, I organized those photos in Forever because they've all got metadata from my phone. I also have, separate from that, and what I'm setting up for a client, I have a heritage, excuse me, I have a separate account just because that's how Kathy's brain works. You can put it all in one account, but I have several accounts. So I have one for my maternal side of the family, and I'm probably going to put my dad's family in there too. Haven't decided yet. I didn't know them growing up, so I've only recently begun to amass a whole collection of stuff from them. But I have the Hodgson Family Archive, and that's where the stories will go, the photos, the documents. Hoping at some point in the future I will be able to add a link to different things so I don't have to make a whole bunch of more documents. But at this moment, I'll have to put documents in there as well. But that's where the photo of Uncle Dan, who was killed at Gallipoli in World War I, that's where his picture will go. That's where the information on the war monument that's in Gallipoli will go. The picture of his name on that monument, the picture of the plate my grandmother got for having her son killed in the war, that's where all that stuff will go, is into that account. And it's different than the modern day digital one. And I am sorting my digital stuff too, but that's where I'll go with like family history that I want to share with all of the descendants from that side of the family, where they don't really need to have access to my photos of lunch last week. Like they don't need access to that. So I'm using that program. There's things that it doesn't do that I need a separate duplicate finder, because it'll detect them on upload, but it won't detect them if, like I said, you can get duplicates in there, or if the information that I already have, I'll want to do some duplicate finding beforehand. But so that would be my primary one. I'm also doing a lot. I also have set up a whole lot of my organization, and what I talked about last week is in simple files in Windows File Explorer. They're chronological, but I can still do a lot with those folders, and that's what I do.
Interesting. It's interesting. I had never heard you
Forever
just
wouldn't fit if I go through my criteria. Forever would not tick every single box, because there isn't anything that ticks every single box. So I have to decide what's important to me. Privacy is number one. Legacy is probably number two on my list because of what I'm doing. And because I've managed to train two kids who are totally interested at the ripe old age of 28 in family history. So that will be another thing. And where one ends and where the other one starts, I haven't quite figured that out yet. And then I have an account for my husband's family, because I just thought, okay, that's still important to my kids, but I don't want to mix it in with my family, if that makes sense. And when you throw in like divorces and stepchildren and adopted kids into the mix, it just seemed to make more sense not to put too many things in there. And again, if we went through today and tried to check off boxes for forever, a lot of them are missing. If we did it again in the fall, which is my point about revisiting, and why we don't make a chart, like why I didn't show you a chart with some of the programs all checked off. It'll be different in 2 to 3 months when we have a bunch more stuff come out. So, and in terms, I know there's a lot of people using Mylio. I used Mylio a long time ago, and back a long time ago, it had horrible customer support. So I gave up, but apparently that's improved. But as I say, things change. You've got to revisit them. What else? Other programs people are using. You tried AC/DC, didn't you, Barbara? And didn't
I
like
did. I did. It is a program, in my view, that's primarily designed for agency people who are modifying photos, and they've added into it features to try to compete with Lightroom. And it does things like bulk metadata very nicely. But it's not fun, to be honest.
Yeah.
And as we talk about this workflow, your point about workflow, I wholeheartedly agree with. The steps of the workflow have to be fun, or you're not going to do it. And I
That's
think
our
that's
whole premise, I think, with Project Kin, and the whole idea of working on projects is, and that we started off with back, I think even in the very first time we did Kathy's Corner was, it's got to be enjoyable or it ain't going to get done. And there's a song, and I forget the name of the song, but it's one of the lines in the song is, can we get to the good part? And as a photo manager, the good part, what makes me grind my way through every single step in order of a client's collection is I get paid. That's my good part. And I get to see it done. But hey, I'm going to be totally honest. When I'm working on my own, nobody's paying me to do this. Like everybody wants it and they're going to go, yay, for a minute and that's it. So I can't use the same workflow with my own stuff as I would as a professional, because like, have you ever organized like 40 years worth of photos? It just takes a long. Have you scanned that many photos? It's boring. Some people love scanning. Kathy never loved scanning, but it's a matter of, with the whole idea of project is, let's pull together some photos and make a project. I know Linda made a great project out of her grandma's diary and it was just like, let's, instead of going through absolutely everything, let's take the diary, let's take out some key stories that were told by the diary and add some pictures to them and make everybody a wall chart of it. And that's the kind of thing that we talk about in Project Kin. And it's what I'm doing with with projects in project. I don't work on just one thing. I don't work the way I would have as a professional, because you got to have some fun. And Barb says that's a good time to wrap because it's 5 o'clock. Actually, I talked too much again, but great discussion though. I really appreciate it.
really good. So I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now for everyone. I want to thank you all for your warm support and participation. But you can stay on for the after party here. Here we go. Thank you again for everything.
Thanks for coming.